Hello, welcome to White Dairy Gardening at our farm. Today we are going to be discussing what you can do if you are not able to start seedlings indoors or you're not able to start planting outdoors. What preparations can you make in order to ensure that when the growing season starts, you'll be up and ready to go? Okay, so one thing that you can do if you can't start your seedlings indoors is winter sowing. So you can start winter sowing by planting in containers that can be covered and placing those containers outdoors. You may not be able to, those plants may not, seeds may not start to grow right away, but as soon as the weather is warm enough, then they will start growing. Or you can simply plan to buy seedlings. Of course, buying seedlings can be a bit expensive, especially if you have a large garden and you have to be buying a lot of seedlings for it. So, starting your own seedlings is actually the best way that you can go. So, as we go through the discussion, we're going to be discussing the things that you can do in the meantime as you wait for the growing season to begin. Now, there's another method that you can use for winter sowing. So, I said you could plant in containers. Another method that you can use is if your garden has been prepped from the previous growing season, then while there is still snow on the ground or your garden is still frozen, if you know where you're going to be planting various plants, then you can just select that portion of the garden and scatter seeds on the frozen ground and then cover it with either plastic, clear plastic, or with a clear plastic container. So things like your carrots, lettuces, and members of the brassica family, you can do that with. There are some seeds that can survive freezing. So whatever seeds you have, if it can survive freezing and it is more on the cool weather side, then you can just sprinkle the seeds on the surface and cover it. And then as soon as the time is actually warm enough, then you will have them germinating. And even if you don't have your soil prepared from the previous season, for things that can be transplanted, you can still use this second method that I mentioned of putting your seeds on the ground. And then as soon as the plants germinate and they reach the point where you can actually transplant them, then you transplant them and free up that spot to do whatever you want to grow there. Now, this takes care of the seedling aspect of it. But what can you do in the meantime if you are not able to start planting in your garden? Because there are many things that we can do to ensure that when the growing season starts, we are ready to go, and the only thing we have to do is just start planting. So, what about cleaning your garden? Sometimes you clean your garden in the fall and you make preparation for the following growing season, but even then, sometimes you still need to do additional cleaning to your garden. That was my experience for last fall. I did had my compost to my garden. I didn't had any of my worm castings because worm castings should not be allowed to freeze. So I didn't had worm casting, but I had it all the compost that I intend to add to my garden for this year, and I also had my mulch on top of that. But I still have to go and clean your garden. Sometimes you're gonna have the case where leaves are gonna be falling off the trees, And even if you rake your yard prior to the fall, the end of fall, then you still have some leaves that are going to be on the tree and they're going to be falling. So you still might have to rake again. Or maybe it is that you did not organize your garden in terms of maybe you pack up some of your growing containers and now you have to put them back out. So there are a lot of things that might need to be done. Now, if your soil is workable, this is a good time for you to be adding your castings, your compost, or whatever means of fertilizer that you may use. And if you have crushed eggshells that you need to add to your garden, now is the time. If you haven't added it yet, now is the time that you actually want to start adding that eggshell, because it will take a few months, even if you crush it, for the eggshell to break down fully and release the nutrients that the plants need. So now would be a good time to add the compost to your garden. Oh, hi, Helpy. I'm doing okay. How are you? Okay, you're doing well. That's good. Right. So when you add these things to your garden, your compost or your worm castings or your eggshell, you want to work that into your soil. But have you decided what you're going to be growing for this growing season? This is another thing that you can do if you haven't done so yet in order to prepare for the start of the growing season. So you decide what it is that you want to grow. And while making this decision, you may also want to know the type of soil that each type of plant will need. You need to know whether your plant is acid loving or if it prefer more neutral environment. Does it prefer, oh hi Russell, does it prefer loose, well drained soil, or does it prefer a lot of watering? Some plants require shade, some require sun. These are a lot of things that you may need to know about your plants. So now is the time when you can start preparing for that. Did I say hi to you, Russell? See, it's just a few minutes and I'm already forgetful. Let's see, LP says, do you know if it is okay to add a composted manure on top of garden when you already have plants ready to harvest? Yes, you can add a compost at any point, composted manure at any point in time. If, however, it is things like lettuce or leafy vegetables that you're going to be harvesting right away, then I would advise allowing at least 2 weeks before you harvest to add these things, because as you know, manure tends to be able to transfer pathogens and bacteria, so you'd have to be careful with that. So at least allow at least 2 weeks in advance to harvesting things like your leafy vegetables. And if you're going to be adding those to your garden while it is while you're ready for harvesting for your leafy greens, I'd recommend not getting it on the leaves of your plant and just putting it around the root of your plant. For instance, I have a bed with some romaine lettuce that I have been cutting leaves off. I added composted manure to empty space next to them without thinking. Then I watered them and thought, yeah, oh, 2 weeks. Oh, hell. That's what I was worried about. When I'm not sick yet, I'll be waiting to harvest anymore. Well, it's good that you're not sick yet and you might not be. But yes, it's recommended that you wait at least 2 weeks after you've added any form of fertilizer to your garden. Okay, so another thing, let's see, the water and then rain splash dirt up on the leaves. Oops, I knew better. Yes, that's the next thing to consider, because even if you water or if you had your compost to the root of the plant and rain falls or you're watering, and if you're watering from overhead, it's going to be causing some of that compost manure to be splashing on your plants. So it's good to wait for that 2 weeks. Okay, so another thing to consider is how much space each plant will need. And there are several benefits to doing this in advance. For one, you'll avoid overcrowding your garden. Let's see what LP says. What about adding unfinished compost to the surface because you're impatient? What's the downside? Compost, are you talking about regular compost from food scraps and garden waste, or are you talking about composted manure? Because if it is composted manure, then it would be pretty much the same. But the danger if it is uncomposted manure, is that it's going to add a lot of nitrogen to your plant and can burn your plant. So for manure, you want to make sure that it is composted. If it is just food scraps and regular garden waste, then that can be added at any point in time. It doesn't really matter. Oh, hi, Han White. We forgot about my live. That's okay. I was wondering if maybe you were sleeping. I know it's pretty late where you are. Okay, so it's regular garden waste and food scraps. Okay. Yeah, that should be okay. I just got started leafy wiggy, so you're not that late. You can join at any point in time, so I wouldn't consider that to be late. Yes, so we were saying consider the space that each of your plants need. So this is something that you can do while you're waiting for your growing season to start. So sometimes it might require reading the package if you purchase seeds, or if you're growing the plant from seedlings, then you need to do research on that to find out how much space each plant need. And the next benefit of doing so is that if your garden is overcrowded, it prevents you from overcrowding your garden. So if your garden is overcrowded, then your plants won't be able to get a good supply of airflow flowing through them, and this can result in plant diseases, and it also may cause any pests that you may have on your plants to spread more readily because the plants are close together where they can just easily transfer from one to another. Now, it will also cause your plants, if you have overcrowded your garden, to fight for nutrients, to fight for sunlight, and stuff like that. Even your produce will be smaller than it is supposed to be. So, it is good to know the size that your plants will grow to and how much space they will need in order to avoid these problems. Now, how can you maximize your space? For a lot of us, our garden space might not be the size that we would like it to be. So we want to get the most out of our space. So here are some tips that you can follow in order to maximize your space. Hi, Mac Bajan. Did I pronounce that right? Or Bajan? Love the way you teach. Oh, thank you. Yes, so how can you maximize your space? One is to consider companion plantings. There are many plants that grow pretty well together. The rule of the thumb is that if the food or the vegetables that you're planting goes well together on the plate, then they goes well together when you're planting them as well. So, for example, you're making a salad and you might have your tomatoes with your lettuce, or you might have your tomatoes with your carrots on the plate. They do well when you plant them together in the ground as well. If, however, you are not certain what can be planted together, it's a good idea again to do some research on that, and then that will be of great help to you. When you're doing companion planting to save space as well, you need to consider the type of plants that you are growing. So, for example, tomato, peppers, and potatoes are members of the nightshade family, which means that they're prone to the same type of pests. So, when you're doing companion planting, it is good not to put these three types of plants together because they're a member of the same family and they are affected by pests. So, for that reason, you want to plant your plants so that they complement each other in sense of one plant will help to repel a particular type of pest from the other plant. Sometimes it is said that putting two different type of plants together, if they are good companion plants, can actually enhance the flavor of what you're growing. So this you might also want to do research on while you're waiting for your growing season to start. Okay, I pronounced it right. Okay, good. I would suggest doing vertical planting for stuff like strawberries and beans. Save you some space. Right on, right on. Yes, that is actually one of my suggestions too. Let's see, LP says, I still have to make it back to your companion planting videos and take notes. Yeah. Vertical planting makes life so much easier. I grew melons and squash vertically last year. Only way I could grow them in the small space. Yes, well, I've never really grown my squash vertically because I usually just plant them in between other things that I'm growing. But I'm thinking of doing so. I did my melon last year vertically. So Trellis Implants, that is one other method that you can use to save space. So, like you said, trellising is one type of vertical way of growing plants. So, anything that can be trellised, as you say, your squash, your cucumbers, your melons, your tomatoes, stuff like that, you want to trellis them so that you can maximize the amount of space. Because things like your squash, the amount of space that a squash would take up if it is running on the ground, you need at least 4 feet of running space for your squash, and you need at least 2 feet of space between the plants. When you're growing them vertically, you can allow 18 inches. So you see where you get to save a lot of space when you do vertical growing. You can also use tiered raised beds, or you can do stackable garden pots to maximize the space. Map Vision says, if you're new to gardening, you won't find better true info. Please do watch all that's been laid out previously. Okay, thanks for that. For sure, I've seen companion videos before, but I need to watch again and take notes. I swore back then I'd complete my planting since I'm expanding my garden this year, but no. Okay. I too have to refer back to my notes from time to time, because although I'm sharing the information with you, sometimes I tend to be forgetful. So I always try to keep notes so that I can refer back to it. And I'm going to be discussing that a little bit more as we go further in the discussion. Okay, so your growing season may not have begun, but weeds tend to start growing before anything else in your garden. So this is something that you can take care of while you're waiting for the growing season to start, because weed, once it start growing, it's going to start sending more suckers and then it's going to take over your garden. So this is something that you should try to get under control while you can. So whether you're going to be using mulching as a means of controlling the weeds, or if you are someone who uses vinegar to control your weed, now is the time to actually now is the time to actually start using that vinegar on your plants, because you don't want to use the vinegar at the point in time when you're planting your vegetable, because the same effect that vinegar has on your weeds is the same effect it's going to have on your vegetables, and you don't want that. So now is the time to control weeds as much as you possibly can. There's so much info about companion planting. It is awesome, but a lot to remember. That is so true. So true, LP. LP says, my mint from last year is trying to take over one of my beds. Silly mint. Yes, because mint send root pretty far and wide. You won't see that it is sending out its root until when you start seeing suckers all over your garden. And in one of my videos last year, I actually dug up one of my mint just to show how far the root of mints will actually grow. And the mint plant was maybe about that bunch, and the root, I actually measured it in the video and showed the root was over 2 feet, over 3 feet long. So mint does, and at that point in time, it was just getting started. So for mint, if you're growing mint in your garden, what I would recommend that you do, if you do not want it to take over your garden, is to put it in a pot and bury the pot in your garden. So you want it to grow in your garden, but you don't want the root to spread. Put it in a pot and then bury the pot in the garden. That way you will control how far the root spread. And when the growing season is up, if the mint is going to remain, if you plant it in the ground or in a container, it is recommended, or at least I suggest you take out the mint, dig it up, and trim the roots, because you don't want it to become root bound in the container that you're growing it in. And you might have to make several containers of mint, or at least get rid of some of the mints. Oh, hi Chanel. Yes. Let's see. LP says vinegar. Okay, I use a lot of vinegar around the house and it is cheap, so that's great. Okay. So true. So much information, no rush. Take your time and learn at your own pace. That is a good idea, because when you rush things, you tend to make a lot of mistakes. When you take your time, you can actually perfect it with time. So it's a good advice, Matt. That's exactly what's happening. It's spread 4 feet across the bed. Yes, and if you don't get it under control now, it is going to spread even more. Yes. So last year I put it in my raised bed, but after digging it up to see how the root is behaving and see how it spread, I decided that I'm going to be putting it in the container, because as much as I love mint, I don't really want it to take over my garden, because I don't really have a lot of garden space. Okay. I don't know why my notes are misbehaving today. I just want to fall down. Okay, so let's see. I couldn't help myself and I bought seeds for lemon mint. Yeah, I went out and bought quite a few different type of, well, just a few mints, but I actually would like to have some more. There's one particular mint, I'm not sure what it is called, that is the most popular mint in Jamaica that I would really love to get my hands on, but I don't really know how to get it here because one, in Jamaica we propagate it not by seeds but by cuttings. So I don't know how I would actually get it, but that is my favorite mint. But who knows? If I happen to go to Jamaica, then I will have to sneak a little piece in. Hey everyone, everybody, don't forget to hit the like button if you haven't yet. Okay, thanks, Helpy. Hi, Cindy Squirrel. I can't wait to hit mint with lawnmower. The scent is wonderful. That is one of the main reasons why I love mint, because the scent of it is just, oh my goodness, it is wonderful. Just like you said. Sometimes I would go out in the garden and just pick the leaf and crunch it just so that I can actually smell it. It's a wonderful, wonderful smell. I would like to try. They have one that they call um, pineapple mint and one that they call chocolate mint. I've never seen those before, but I would definitely love to try those. I want to know, do they taste, does the chocolate one taste like chocolate? Or does the pineapple one actually taste like pineapple? Or maybe does it just carry a smell? What is the reason why I got that name? So I'd be interested in growing those type of mints, but I guess time will tell. It's high getting clean on the prairies. I haven't had much luck starting mint from seeds. Can find all kinds of variety in the greenhouse. Oh yeah. I've never really seen a lot of varieties of mints in the greenhouse. In the greenhouses here. But then how many of them do I actually go to? And with the pandemic out there, I know I won't be going to a lot of them. So but the locations where I go, I've hardly ever seen them. Uh, this year is going to be the first year I actually try growing from seeds. And I think my lemon balm, some of them germinated, so I'm happy for that. I haven't sown the other type of mints yet, so I don't know how they are going to perform, but so far my lemon balm germinated, so we'll see. LP says, did you ever find seeds for indeterminate tomatoes? Perhaps that website had some sellers. No, I haven't found any. I haven't found any. Would be nice to find, but I haven't found any. Hi, Herban Girl Gardening. Yes, chocolate mint. That would be awesome. I've heard of pineapple sage. I've heard pineapple sage is wonderful. Oh, so you have pineapple sage and pineapple mint. Interesting. Now I want to try that too. Dumpy says my lemon mint has germinated. Fingers crossed. Okay, good. Hi, Melanie. Let's see. No, I don't have them either, but I've heard of them and want them. Okay. I don't know what to do with these notes today, why they're so disobedient in staying. where I put them. Okay, so do you have plants that prefer acidic soil? If you have plants that prefer acidic soil, while you're waiting for your growing seasons to start, one thing that you can do is to start save your things like your onion or your tomato, not tomato. Tomato is acidic, so you can save your tomato residue, anything that is acidic in nature. So when you use your onions, or if you have things like your orange peel, stuff like that, you can actually start saving those, dry them if you want to. You can dry them and powderize them and then add them to your garden when you start planting those plants that love acid. Or you can just simply bury them in the garden in the areas where you're going to be growing those acid loving plants. Let's see. Kiki says, I just sowed my lemon mint. I'm excited. Yes, I think I know how you feel. I was very excited when I actually saw that my lemon balm mint actually germinated, because it's the first time I'm growing it. I don't know what it looks like, I don't know what it tastes like, but because I love mint, it doesn't really matter. So I'm just waiting and hoping that it will actually grow and work its miracle for me so I can enjoy it. Let's see. Urban Girl says, had peat moss for acidity as well. Yes, because peat moss is extremely acidic. And make sure it is peat moss. Make sure it is peat moss and not sphagnum moss, because peat moss, as I've mentioned in previous live, is the same as sphagnum moss, except that the peat moss has been processed, so it is not going to grow. So if it is the peat moss, so when it is unprocessed, it is sphagnum moss, and then when it is processed, it is peat moss. The peat moss will not grow in your garden. The sphagnum moss will grow in your garden, but guess what? Sphagnum moss, if the environment is not acidic enough for it, it will convert the soil into an acidic environment. So you have to be careful if you have it in your garden growing, because it will make the environment very acidic. Mac Version says, that's what I'm talking about. Great info. Thank you. You're very welcome. LP says, good to know. My starter mix has peat moss. Oh, hi, Newark Gardner. How are you doing? Oh dear, it will? Whoa, smart plant. Yes, it will actually convert your soil into an acidic one. So you have to be careful if you have sphagnum moss growing. Okay, so we all are busy managing our time, and managing our time can be a bit tricky. So we want to get the best outcome. So what we need to do is make sure that we plan our activities so that we are using our time to the best of our abilities. Not suggesting that you're not doing so, but sometimes we can become distracted because of how much we have to do. And so, my suggestion is, for a lot of us, we are actually waiting to be able to start our garden outdoors because the season hasn't started yet. So, for some, the season has already started. So, if you have projects planned for the summer and the spring and they can be done earlier, try getting those projects done earlier so that your time is freed up for when the growing season starts, so that you can dedicate your time towards your gardening. Because when you have a lot of things to do all at once, then it can be frustrating at times. So any projects that you have, if you can move up the time to now when we're waiting on the growing season, then it would be a good idea to do so now so that we can spend more time relaxing and enjoying our gardening. Let's see. Melanie says, I am mixing peat moss in everything I planted. Okay. Okay, so are you going to need trellis for your garden? If so, and you do not have enough trellis for your garden, now will be a good time to actually start making your trellises. If you're going to be making them yourselves or if you're going to be buying them, now is a good time to start gathering them because that is going to save you time so that you don't have to do it when the garden season starts. Now, what about growing containers that you used last year? Did you get the chance to sterilize them last year? If not, now is the time to actually spend to get them sterilized. And if you're going to be using back the potting soil that you used in these containers last year, now is the good time to get it sterilized as well. So there are many things that we can do to save time and prepare for our garden season now to make things easier for ourselves later on. Let's see, what do you use to sterilize grow bags? I have no experience with grow bags, but you can use, depending on, I don't know if it is something that is bleachable. If it is, then you can put it in a container with bleach water and sterilize it and let it stay in there for a while. If not, put it in a container, large container that it can fit in, and use hot boiling water to pour on it. You can use the same method of hot water to sterilize your soil, but then if you have things like worm castings with worm eggs and living microbes in there, using the hot water is not necessarily the best method. Yes. So you can also use hydrogen peroxide to spray the bag. Let's see. Um, did I miss something here? Urban Girl says, just make sure you have organic matter added to your peat moss for balance. Some people mix it with garden soil. I had cow manure and mushroom compost. Oh, okay, good suggestion. Melanie says, we'll need trellis too. Okay. Oh, leafy greens, yes. She suggests using hydrogen peroxide for your grow bags. So that's good. Urban Girl says, just wash them with soapy warm water or bleach water. Okay, these are some good suggestions for those who have grow bags. I've never really used grow bags, so let's see. And White says, we're having a later winter or a spring winter. Therefore, I cannot start planting anything in my garden. I have been making my trellis, just need a few more. Okay, good. Not good that you're having a later winter, but good that you are making use of the time in preparing your garden. Yes, I don't know. We had a nice, fairly warm winter during the time when the winter was supposed to be really bad, and then everything go back to what it was supposed to be. So we had a really cold winter, and now we're starting to have a very warmer spring than we should be having. And then all of a sudden, yesterday it was just snow all day, like heavy, heavy snow. When I woke up this morning, the ground was white, but it is sunny outside in the last 2 hours, so most of that snow is melting, but it is still pretty cold out there. But yes, that's a good idea, and white, to continue preparing your garden and making your trellises and stuff like that. Let's see. LP says I added perlite, vermiculite, and worm casting to my peat moss. I've had Iffy germination, and I'm wondering if it is because of the peat moss. That one I am not able to answer because I've never really used peat moss for my potting soil. So I don't really know. Maybe someone here on the live might have experience with that and might be able to answer that question for you. But I've never used peat moss, so I don't really know how it works in terms of germination. I once saw a video about using peat moss, and some recommend using it for seed starting and some don't. I don't remember the reason why those who said they don't recommend it did. So I don't know, you'd have to look that up. Hi, Pit Stop. Hi, Sinclair West. I want to grow that chronic. What's the best soil to use? Chronic. Um, I don't know what chronic is, so I don't really know what to say regarding the type of soil that it's gonna need. Sorry about that. Let's see. The Urban Girl says the fabric grow bags are machine washable. Oh, that's even better yet. Yeah, that's even better yet. Thanks for all the suggestion, everyone. Okay, you're welcome, Helpy. Okay, so Melanie says she mixes hers with soil as well. Oh Lord, my kids, my son just woke up, so I think he's going a bit. He's being silly. Okay, so LP says, sorry for your weather lock, Han and white and mini. Okay, good way to use your time. Matthew Bargen says, yes, they are washable. I would hair dry them as well. Yeah, most materials you want to hair dry because you don't want the heat to be shrinking them too much. So it's a good idea to hair dry them. Oh, you had snow today too, Han White. Yes, this weather just won't go away. But then for in my location, it is normal to have snow. I just wish it would go away because we've been having such a nice March weather, March spring weather. So I was hoping that it would go away for good. But we can have snow all the way up to the last day in April. So I'm not very hopeful where that is concerned that we won't be getting any more snow. Okay, let's see. Urban Girl says she's using peat moss and perlite for seed starting and she's had no issues. Okay, thanks for sharing that information. You both had snow? No, I'm so sorry. Yeah, but that's a norm for us, so no worries. It's just that it gets in the way of the things that I need to get done outdoors. But the good side of it is that I get to do what I want to do indoors when it is snowing outdoors. It's just that I was supposed to look after my worms today, but when I opened the door and saw the snow, I'm like, nope, I'll do that maybe tomorrow. LP says, hmm, maybe it's something else I've done. That's a possibility too, why the seeds are not germinated in the peat moss mix. It would be nice if you could figure out what it is so that you can avoid that situation another time. But sometimes you do everything that you're supposed to do, and the things still don't work out the way you want it. Sometimes it is not the case that you did something wrong, but it would be good to find out what the reason is so that in case it is that you made some form of mistake, then you might be able to avoid it in the future. But yeah, Macbajan says, we talk about gardening here. LP says, don't forget to hit the like button if you haven't already. That helps our channel. Oh, thank you. You're so kind. Newark Garden asks, what time is it where I am in Canada? It is now 5:46 where I am. And it's nice, bright, and sunny outside. Thankfully, because it was so dark this morning with all that overcast from the snow we've had since yesterday morning. So I'm happy to see some sunshine. Urban Girl says, if I see snow again, I just might faint. Yeah, who wants to see snow now, right? Bayesian says, thank you for the reminders. I hit the thumbs up first thing. Encourage all to do the same. Oh, you guys are so kind. Oh, and why do you say it's not normal for you to have snow at this time, so you're unhappy? I can just imagine. It's normal for me and I'm unhappy, so I can just imagine how you're gonna be if it's not the norm. Urban Girl says it could be anything, seeds are finicky. That is so true. So true because I have seedlings that I started. I use the same method to start my seedlings, and some germinate in one container. I have the same type of seeds in another container, and they take forever to germinate. And when they do, some of them don't germinate. And the funny thing is that the seeds all come from the same package or from the same fruit, but some just decided not to germinate. And the seeds are not old because for the seeds that I purchased, a lot of them don't come with dates so that you know when they were harvested or when they expire. But for the seeds that I harvested from my garden or from store bought fruits, I know when I harvested them, so the seeds are good. But sometimes you plant and some of the seeds just decide not to germinate. So who knows? Let's see. Macbasian says, I'm up north in Toronto. I fully expect another snow or two. I agree. Boo. Uh, yeah. CLP says she's in the Midwest US and won't be surprised if we see a bit of snow again, but not certain. Okay. Just 1 hour behind me in Arkansas. Okay. It's good to know. And Matt Bajan said it is 7:48 here in Toronto, and the same for Melanie. The mix was moist, so the mix was moist to start, so I didn't think I needed to top water too much, but I did water. I re-sow a bunch of stuff in the same container with better luck. Maybe the water issue or I planted too deep. Those are possibilities as well. Yes, I did the same thing, well, similar thing where I sowed seeds earlier in the month. Well, not this month, but in the latter part of February and the early part of March, and they did not germinate. And then I sowed more seeds in the same container and they germinated. And I followed the direction as to how deep the seeds were supposed to be sown, but they just did not germinate. So I don't know if it is a case where because of the outside temperature and I'm starting them indoors, I don't know if because they're so close to the window, if that might have something to do with it. Because I find that all the seeds that I started early, they grow at a much slower rate than the seeds that I start now, even though they're exposed to the same conditions in terms of watering and in terms of the grow lights that I'm using and the amount of heat that they're getting from where I put them. But I don't know if maybe the external temperatures from the window affecting them. But those that got started a few months ago, they grew at a much slower rate than now. Let's see. So no snow in Niagara Falls. That's good. So LP says golden rule. Never bury your seeds deeper than twice the size of the seeds. Yes, so true. Perfect advice, urban girl. It's 12:50, almost 1 a.m. in the morning. Okay. Thanks for staying up just to be watching my live. I know it's a great sacrifice on your part and I appreciate it a lot and White. Let's see. LP says pit stop. I had the same thing happen. My red romaine I planted in November, not full size, but still harvesting baby leaves. Okay. And Urban Girl says, and also mist the top of the soil with spray bottles so they don't dry out. Yes, you know what I have been doing for my seedlings because as if you're following my videos, you would know that I keep my seedlings that I'm starting right about 6 to 8 inches above my heat vent. So they're getting like the full force of the heat that is coming up there. So it's very easy for them to dry out. So what I've been doing is to cover each of those containers with plastic so that it will act as a little mini greenhouse and trap the moisture. And because I'm using that method, things are germinating even faster than the time that they say they are supposed to germinate. So, yeah, keeping it moist is a pretty good method. Okay, so Urban Girl says, not Urban Girl, but LP says, oh, good thinking. The window would transfer temperatures. Yes. Malaysian says Urban Girl is on fire. All true. All true. Okay. And White, are you in Canada as well? That's New York Gardener's question. Pitstop says, I'm hoping for better germination now that it is warm. Definitely gonna be seeing a better germination rating as it is warming up. Let's see. LP says, I've heard that, but don't pay very good attention. Melanie says, the squirrel dug up all of my broad beans, so I worried about the other, my snap peas. Oh, those squirrels. Let's see. And White says, yes, the seeds I started in December to February took forever. LP says, and White, you are a good supporter. She is, isn't she? Well, you all are good supporters. You're pretty consistent in being a part of my life. So thank you all. Let's see. Pitstop says, that's the time I usually go to bed, Han, but it is 4:43 here. No, I go to bed late and wake up late. Okay. I tend to be going to bed late these days, but I wish I could wake up late. But as I have the little ones to get ready for school and stuff like that, so getting up late is not an option for me, unfortunately. LP says, I started kohlrabi, red giant mustard, and beets this weekend. Nice. And many are already sprouting. Very nice. Okay, LP says she's sorry that the squirrel got to your beans. Yes, those squirrels are indeed mean. Oh, you're welcome, LP. Bejan says, easy to support a great info channel like this. Thank you for putting the work in and bringing us your knowledge. You're very welcome, my dear. That is how we learn from each other because while I'm sharing the little bit that I know, I'm also learning from you because you're here sharing what you know. So that is how we're actually helping each other to learn so that we can have a really nice garden. Because I don't think there's anything more satisfying to us than seeing our gardens looking really healthy and producing really nice vegetables and fruits. And when you know that, yes, you're the one who grew all these things and you're sitting down and enjoying it, I don't think there's anything more rewarding. Let's see. Boy, you're loving the weather. And White says, I go to bed late and get up early. Mine are big now. They don't stay little long. I wish I would have taken more pictures and videos. I wish I had taken more pictures. I do a lot of videos, but I don't do a lot of pictures. Russell is giving a thumbs up. Question, pit stop. What does MVP mean? It says, Urban Girl says, I love our gardening community. Yes, me too. It's a very nice community. I know that feeling. I live in my backyard last year all summer. Me too, Urban Girl. Yes, last year, as soon as I get my husband and the kids off to school and work, I'm outside and I only come inside just long enough to look after the kids, see to it that they're paying attention to the schoolwork or what needs to be done and back out. And when I go inside, when it is time to make lunch, when it is time to make the dinner, or if it gets dark outside, literally, I'm going in when it is dark outside because it's just so much fun to be outside. But unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to do that. I won't be able to continue doing that. I'm going to have to spend a little bit more time because my ophthalmologist is telling me that the sun is damaging my eyes because I'm in it too much. So, yeah, but it is so much fun. Let's see, Bajan says exactly. Watching those you love eat and enjoy what you grew is probably the most satisfying thing growing your own vegetable. Most valuable player. Okay, okay. Thanks for the explanation. Okay, so what type of pests did you encounter when you were growing your garden last year? And when you encounter them, what actions did you take to prevent them from growing? So these are things that you can consider when you are preparing your garden. So when you think about the type of pests that you had to deal with, and look for ways that you can treat them and trying to find more than one ways to deal with these pests is something that you can work on now before the growing season starts. And this is pretty important because you don't want those pests to take over your garden. And the funny thing is that pests tend to have a memory of where they find the things that they love to eat and they're going to return to that location. So you have to spend the time to get prepared for them. Let's see. Urban Girl says, oh no, will sunglasses help? Yeah, it will help. So I have been wearing my sunglasses in the last couple of days when I'm outside, but then it's a bit of a bother because I'm always using my carpentry tools, my saws and stuff, and I need to see what I'm doing properly, and the shades just make it difficult. But yeah, okay, so let's see. Bejan says, oh, LP says, indeed, it feels so good to harvest your own food. Yes, and especially since you know exactly what is in those food, because you know if you're using chemical fertilizers, you know if you're using organic fertilizers, you know exactly what you're eating when you grow your own. And it tastes so much better than what you get in the stores. Not to mention that because they don't have the preservative on them like you'd get from the stores, so your own produce tend to last longer. Even though they have preservative on them, they tend to go bad in a bad way. And so it's nice when you can actually grow your own stuff. Let's see, LP says, yes, sunglasses and a wide sun hat perhaps. Yes. Oh, Pit Stop, you said you have problems with aphids. I'm still battling with them. Okay. Yeah. Those ones, they are, I think those are one of the most menacing pests you can have in your garden. And then the thing is, if you're using the same type of treatment every year, the aphids or whatever type of pest you have, it's the same family that keeps reproducing every year. So they become used to the type of treatment that you're giving them. So it's a good idea to rotate these treatments so that they won't get too accustomed to it. Let's see, Melanie says, growing and sharing with friends and family gives me pleasure. That is so true. Aphids, those little pests. Yeah. Let's see. LP says, I know exactly what's happening to my food. Well, for the most part. Yeah. Oh, hi, best yet. Right. So, back to dealing with what you can do now to prepare your garden. Are you planning to build more raised beds? If so, this is something that you can do while you're waiting for your growing season to start. If you need soil or top up for those raised beds that you have, then how much do you need? This is something you can calculate while you're waiting for the growing seasons to start. You can find out if you can get it in bulk, if you can get it cheaper, where you can source it. Hi, her healthy home. Right, so these are things that we can do to prepare our gardens now while we're waiting for the growing season. Let's see, LP says, agreed. New York gardener, you're in for a bright future. Remember, failures are still lessons. That is, this is my second year back to gardening. Okay, yeah, failures are indeed good lessons. Now, if you're growing from seeds, some plants may require specific time to be planted. For example, if you're growing things like pumpkin and beans, these can be planted just a few weeks before your last frost, while there are other plants that you have to wait until your last frost. So now you can use the time that you have to plan what you're going to be planting and when they should be planted. So you want to be researching these if the information is not on your seed package. So these are practical steps that you can use to maximize your time so that you have more time for your gardening when the season starts. Okay. And after you have figured out when these things can be planted, it is a good idea to put the things that needs to be planted first together so that when it is time for you to actually start planting, you don't have to be fumbling around going through all your seeds to find the ones that you need to plant now, because you have everything grouped according to when they are supposed to be planted. LP says, don't forget to hit the like if you haven't already. Okay. And Matt Bejan says, failure are all I remember. Teach you exactly what not to do again. That is so true. So true. Let's see. And White says, I made 2 raised beds and I'm so excited about them. It is always exciting when we have more more garden space. I know the feeling. I don't have any more space to make raised bed, although I wish I could put in a lot more, but I think I've been given all the space that I can take up for gardening. So I was able to sneak in a few 20-gallon containers. I got about 4 in last week. So I think maybe I might be able to sneak one more in. After that, there won't be any more space for me to grow anything. But I have space on the front where I made 2 raised bed, and unfortunately, we have the government Dutch elm trees right on the front of the property, and they're blocking out the sunlight, so I can't even plant anything in there. So I'm wondering if maybe I could put in some cool weather crop in there. I'm gonna actually try and see if the cool weather crop will grow in there, or plants that don't require sunlight, because we tried tomatoes 2 years ago in there. They grew and they produced tomatoes, but they were just some tiny little things, and the plants were looking wishy washy. So yeah, we know we can't plant anything that requires a good amount of sunlight. Let's see, Melanie says, I'm working on a new no dig garden bed. Nice. Went to buy soil and manure today. Very nice. And White says, well, I've fitted up 2 raised beds. That's nice. Yeah, it will be fun when we are able to start actually planting the stuff outside. Let's see, that's great and White. Congrats. Okay. And LP says to Melanie, that's awesome. Good work. LP says, I love trees and yet they frustrate the gardener in me. I know exactly what you mean because I have 2 Dutch elm in the front and I have 2 in the back. One in the back kind of is outside of my garden area, but the other one is directly blocking the sunlight from a portion of my garden area. So I went and cut down a portion of it last year, but the tree is so massive that I can't reach to a lot of it to cut it down. And to get it cut here, you're gonna have to pay a minimum of $3,000, guys. I would just want to get rid of the entire tree, but $3,000 minimum to get it cut. So I'll just keep it there, and every year I'll try go up there and try cut off a bit of it myself. LP says experimenting is a great way to go. Hi Keisha, do you have any tips on on grow, growing cherry blossoms? My family and I tried last summer. It seems to be impossible. Any tips on growing cherry blossoms? I'm not sure what to think of growing cherry blossom. Are you asking how to get your cherry trees to blossom? Or is there a plant that is called cherry blossoms? I don't know. I watch a lot of Korean drama, so when I hear of cherry blossom, I think of the trees that are producing blossom, the cherry trees that they have in these Asian country that produces their cherry blossom, but those are big trees. I don't know anything about growing them. So if you can explain the question a little bit clearer, but then I don't really know how. If you're talking about cherry trees, then I know that if you want your cherry trees to blossom and produce fruits, you require a male and a female cherry tree. So if that's what you're talking about, then yes, you need to have both. And Pit stop in her video today or yesterday talk about her. orange or blood marrow orange that would not blossom, and what she had to do, all the various compost and fertilizers, organic fertilizers, and everything she had to put around the tree, and finally got it blossoming. So you might want to look into that if that is in line with what you're talking about. Okay, Russell says, if it wasn't for Dutch elm disease, I wouldn't be gardening. Really? Do share. Sounds interesting. I'd like to learn more. How did Dutch elm disease get you into gardening? I know I'm frustrated with this Dutch elm disease, although my Dutch elm trees don't have it, but there are so many restrictions on the Dutch elm trees that it is actually very frustrating, because you can't cut them certain time of year, you cannot compost the leaves from it, you cannot use the wood fire for firewood, and you can't take it to the regular dump if you cut the trees. So it is a bit frustrating to deal with it, because four of them in my yard, all those leaves, I could make so much mulch with it, but or so much compost or mulch with it, but you can't compost it and you can't use it as mulch. So it is pretty frustrating. And the ones on your front property you're not allowed to cut because they belong to the government. So you just have to let it stay there and deal with whatever negative results from it. Let's see. LP says, oh wow, Russell, I used to have three large trees in my yard. One had to be cut down, then the other two fell. I saw them. I saw them, freaked me out. So we are in a similar boat. Bigger garden. LP, Our Healthy Home says some cherries are self-fertile. Dower, Dower cherries, never heard of those. Are okay. That's something nice to learn, something new to learn. LP says, wow, that's restrictive. Yes, it is very, very restrictive. But if you compost them or use them as mulch, or you use the wood for, if you save the wood for fire, then it will attract the beetles or the bugs that cause the Dutch elm disease. So, because it will attract them, then you can't have those things lying around your property, but yet still the government keep on planting them. I don't know what's the purpose of planting them if they are so chaotic. They do look nice when they grow big and they form this canopy over the road, so they have it on both sides of the road, and then they form this canopy, and then when the frost goes onto the branches of the trees and you're driving underneath that canopy of frosted trees, it is quite beautiful. But I mean, it happens with other trees, so why plant the Dutch elm? But this is Canada, they don't really change anything. Whatever rules are made from my Adam was alive, they will keep the same rule forever unless something drastic happened to force them to change the rules. So nothing you can do about that. You just have to deal with it. Russell says, yes, LP. That was so great getting those trees out and starting raised garden beds. Yeah, nothing better than having more growing space, eh? And Han White says, you are right, her healthy home, because we had one in Jamaica and it used to produce fruits. Yes, that is true. And I remember that cherry tree. For the trees that we have in Jamaica, most of our fruit trees, we don't require male and female fruit trees. But here in Canada, I find that a lot of the trees require male and female fruit trees, which was very surprising to me because I'm not used to that. Um, the thing is, a lot of the trees, the fruit trees that grows in Jamaica, unless you live in urban areas, a lot of the fruit trees grow naturally. So if they're male and female, because I know that our guinea trees we would have male and females, but you don't hear people talking a lot about male and female trees, and you need to have them fairly close to each other for things to reproduce. That was never really an issue for us, but here you have to have male and female trees. Sometimes you might have the female tree in your yard, but someone in your neighborhood might have the male tree, and so your trees will produce. But yeah, here a lot of the trees require both male and female. Let's see. Russell says, I built the beds back in 2009 out of landscape timber. I need to get more timber to build higher. Okay. Earthy Home says, very interesting. That is great when someone in the neighborhood has the pollinator for your tree. I agree with you totally because I don't have a lot of space where I can be putting in male and female trees. So when there are people in the neighborhood who has it, I'm like, oh yeah, you go and plant them for me. I'll just sit down and reap the benefits. Oh Lord. Okay. So some other things that you can do to prepare your garden while you're waiting for the growing season to start. If you have issues with pests like rabbits and squirrels or deers, then you can put up fencing around your garden now while you're waiting. And if you need to irrigate your garden, so you might need to install those irrigators now while you are able to. Some of them might need to be buried. And if your soil is workable, then you can go ahead and bury some of those irrigators in your garden. So there are so many things that you can do to prepare for the growing season and to save yourself time from having it to do it when the growing season starts. Melanie says, I was in a townhouse with a big tree covering the backyard, and after a big ice storm, most of the branches break off, and I was so happy. Then I could plant a few tomatoes. I would be happy too. Let's see, Newark Gardner says, the male trees don't produce fruits. No, they don't produce fruits. They will produce the flowers, but they will not produce fruits. So the male trees will produce the fruits, and then the pollens from that will pollinate the female flowers, but they don't produce fruits. Okay, thank you. Oh, hi, Rodney. How have you been? I haven't seen you or I haven't heard from you in a while. Hope all is going well. Oh, you just got out of the garden screening some compost. Nice. I'm not at that stage where I can screen any compost just yet. I'm gonna have to wait until way down another 3, 4 months or longer before I'm able to use any compost that is produced this year. Let's see. Yes. Right. So gardening can be fun, but then if you wait until when the garden seasons the growing season start to actually start putting plants in place, because there is so much to do to prepare the garden to be able to start the actual planting. Sometimes it can be very overwhelming, which is one of the reasons why it is so important to spend the time to do all of the prep that you can as soon as you can. Okay, so did you know that you can actually start prepping for your 2020 garden now? And you might wonder, why do I need to start prepping for my 2020 garden when 2021 gardening season hasn't even started yet? But when you are growing your 2021 garden, it's a good idea to take notes. Take notes of what you plant, where, how it performed. Take note of, did it do better in the sun? Will it do better in the shade? You can take note of what type of pest affected your plants, what method you used this year, what different method you can use next year so that the pests don't get accustomed to the method that you're using. You can take note of your container gardening. How did the container garden do? Did it perform well? What is it that I did wrong with my garden this year? What can I do better? So you can actually start preparing for your 2022 gardening by taking notes of what you're doing in 2021. Because sometimes we think we're going to remember everything, but we tend to forget things. So taking note of what you are doing for your 2021 garden will help you to stand a better chance of having a more successful garden for 2022. Because remember, the more you plan ahead, the better success you're going to have. So keeping record is a good idea. Now, what mistakes, oh, I've already asked that. Yeah, so what mistakes have you made in your last growing season? And how did you treat it? And what are you planning to do so that you don't make the same mistake again? I made quite a few mistakes last year with my garden. So, one of the biggest mistakes that I made last year is with the things that I planted. I was planting a lot of new vegetables that I'm not accustomed to growing. And some of them that I'm accustomed to growing, I'm not accustomed to growing a lot of them in Canada. So in Jamaica, most of these things don't matter when you plant them because it is summer all year round. But here, you would think that the warm weather crop, you have to plant all of them after your last frost. But there are some warm weather crop that you can start sowing your seeds directly outdoors just before the last frost. So not knowing when I can plant what was a big mistake for me last year, because then I end up with some things growing but not producing anything because the growing season was not long enough. Whereas if I had started them prior to the last frost, I would have been able to harvest stuff. So this is one of the mistakes that I made last year. Let's see. LP says, great advice. I'm behind on taking notes this year, but I do use photos to help me record stuff. Okay, that's a good idea, a good way of doing it. Okay, so Leafy Wiggy says this is her first growing season. I wish you all the best with it, Leafy Wiggy. Oh, and Han White says her garden was overcrowded. Rodney says we space things out too much. Should have made better use of space. Yes. But you see, these are all learning experience for us. So every time we make these mistakes and we look at the outcome, then we can make the adjustments so that our gardens can be more successful for the next season. So, yep. McBajan says, hope you truly enjoy Leafy. Okay. Pit Stop says, I messed up my last frost date and now I am behind in the season. Oh, so sorry. I thought it was March 15 and it was February 15. Woo! You can start planting so early, girl. I'm jealous. Pit Stop says we had a similar problem. And Melanie is wishing Leafy all the best. Yeah, so this is one of the mistakes that I made. So this year, what I did is make a list of everything that I intend to grow. Of course, the list keeps getting longer, but I need to stop now because I finished planning my garden, what I'm going to be growing this year and where I'm going to be planting each of them. And I don't really have any more space. So I need to stop adding things to the list. But so what I've done is created a list of everything that I intend to grow, and then I researched the amount of space that each of these plants need to grow, and then like taking into consideration companion planting and trellising, of course, to maximize my space. So now I have a list of when to start each of those plants if I'm starting them indoors, and a list for if I'm starting them directly outside. And then by doing so, I can always just refer back to this so that I don't make the same mistake of starting things too late. Because it can be frustrating when you're looking at the plants growing and doing so well, but then your season is not long enough for you to be able to harvest it. And then another thing that you need to consider is how long does your seeds take to germinate? Because some seeds take up to 6 weeks to germinate. So, knowing this will allow you to start your plant at the right time so that you're able to have a good harvest. So, these are the details you need to keep notes of so that you can always refer back to it. And sometimes, as I said before, you might think you're going to remember, but you never know what may happen and you don't remember. So, keeping notes is a pretty good idea. Right, so let's see. Leafy Wiki, it's my first year as well. Let's do this. Nice of you to be encouraging one another. It's pretty good. Yes, so this is all the information that I have prepared for today's live. We have been at it for quite a while. It was pretty interesting. I learned quite a lot from you guys, quite a lot. So thanks for sharing your experiences, and thanks for helping out each other to learn more about how they can improve their garden. It was pretty good and a lot of fun. Let's see. Leafy Wiggy says, anyone else have zero success rate with Dollarama peat pods? I don't know. I've never tried it, so I don't know. Russell says, I'm going to try onion seeds. Any advice? Onion seeds, they recommend you start your seedlings indoors at least 10 weeks before your growing season actually starts. So my growing seasons will start after the last frost date around the 21st or the 24th of May. And so I started mine from the 5th of March. So they recommend 10 weeks prior to in order to be able to harvest, because the initial stage they germinate very quickly, but the initial growing stage they grow very slowly, and the plants are so tiny and skinny that it is, even when they're 4, 5, 6 inches high, it's hard to transplant them because they don't really have any body to them. So starting from seeds, you need to start pretty early. Pit Stop says, have a good night. Same to you, my dear. LP says, last year, YouTube community like this helped me get back to gardening so very much. Okay, that's nice. That's very nice. Yes, we have to find ways to help each other out. It's very important. McBation says, hope you enjoy your first year. I think you will love eating and sharing what you grew. Just tastes better. So true. Crystal says, I'm trying bunching onions. So far they are germinating and grow slow, but I think my light is kind of low. Okay. Well, it's good that you have them started already. They do grow slow. They do grow slow at first because I have some scallions that I started growing, I think that was November. And even in February, early part of February, they were still very skinny. I didn't have them on the grow lights, I just had them on my window. They were still very skinny, but in the last 2 months, they finally have some nice body onto them. So, yes, it does. They do take quite a while before they actually look reasonably well. So now I should wait for next year. If you're gonna be starting the seeds, I don't know how long your growing season is, because 10 weeks is a good time to start based on your frost date, but then it also depends on how long your growing season is. For me, it is only 3 months, which means that if I'm going to get the plants to where I want them, the onions where I want them, then I have to start them indoors 10 weeks earlier. That might not be the case for you. If you have a long growing season, then you can still start your seeds now. Okay, LP says good night, pit stop. Noah Gardner says, pit stop, are you leaving? Have a good evening. See you in the next live. Maybe my own. Okay, I will be looking forward to that one. And Rodney says, everyone takes care. Okay, have a good night, Rodney. Melanie says, last year was my first year and I did not have this kind of support. So how did you do last year with your with it without this kind of support, Melanie? LP says, thank you. That was very helpful. You're very welcome, LP. Bejan says, thanks all that being here. Like I said before, this is a great place for info. Feel you won't find better. Oh, that is so nice. So LP says to Melanie, I'm sorry to hear that. It's good that you're here now. So much food info or good info to learn and grow from. Oh, you're welcome, Russell. Bejan says, that's not nice. No support. Come back here. This is a friendly place. Uh, so you're a comedian too, Matt Bejan. Okay, cool. I like that. Okay, so I'm gonna be saying goodbye until Friday when we will be doing our worm Q&A, the worm farm Q&A. I'm getting hungry now, so I need to go have myself some supper. Seems as if I talk about food every time I'm here. I need to get with it and be quiet. Melanie says, was not organized, just go with the flow. My dear, there are many of us, myself included, who have been gardening for years and still just learning to get organized. So that's no big deal. And even though we're getting organized, sometimes it takes years for you to actually get to where you want to be. So no worries, you're doing pretty well. And New York Gardner says, good night, all. Enjoy this live. Thank you. That's very encouraging. Okay, take care. Okay, so have a good night, everyone. Stay safe, and I wish you all the best with your gardening. Oh my God, my belly is growling.